today Rinpoche gave an explanation of the section on how the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise. We went through the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the 4 conditions, according to Jayan Sheba's commentary, as well as Rinpoche's own.
가족 가정의 로치에 아저씨 신의 말에
제주주고
다 티바 체모들 티바 체면 요구 생지 권한 대바 생지 비추 생지는 쇼발로 비추 사지 소 말에 다 티바 체미 아주 요구세 차지 다니바 생지 비추 대바 네바 생지 비추 대 나리 좀 보데 니자 자주자고래 골마 진송 조 듄바들도 듄바 네바 생지다 집수 말바
Then Rinpoche, ewa je.
Ewa sum
Sum gare. Ale de tambo. Ale leso.
Senji bichu.
Leso.
Senji ni shoba
lo Tuchena.
What the cousin did a
Tuche. So when we, once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And then specifically, we're looking at the section on training the mind on the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. When we look at that section, we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's own outline, we see that he breaks it down into 3 specific categories. The first category is showing that the spirit of enlightenment, or bodhicitta, is the only entrance to the Mahayana. And the second category is how you develop that spirit of enlightenment, or how you develop bodhicitta. And then the third category is how you engage in the bodhisattva deeds after having achieved the spirit of awakening, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So it's really like once you achieve bodhicitta, what one does, what are the actions of someone, a bodhisattva. So that's what the third category is about. So we've gone through the first category, and now we're currently in the second category, which is how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. Nipa ewajire. Okay.
Senji bichu
That's so.
Nipa senji jeta jibi chudela. Onja jibi saji jedigdoa. And Jukala tene senji bichu jije. Nipa
Rimbo.
Shanchu chuji senji birimba. Nipa je. Somba senji bitse. Somba senji bitse. Jeba chuge zon chulo sije. Saji jirendua. Da tombo tene jine kala tene senji bichu dro tombo. Tela jirendua tombo la jedan. Jen jedan, ju jedan. Toje saji zon diyo marbe. Jen jele jewa, ju jele jewa, to jele jewa son. Saji zon ro. Saji zon wat kale jiju na. Kuzala incha anga tengu.
Less so. Just cheap. Say. Suje. Okay, gyu. Okay. So now we're going to deal with category number 2. And category number 2 is how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. In Jayan Sheba's commentary, and then also in the outline of Lama Tsongkhapa, we find that there are 4 categories to explain how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. First, how the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise. Second, the stages of training in the spirit of enlightenment. Third, the measure of producing the spirit of enlightenment. And then fourth, how to adopt the spirit of enlightenment through a ritual. So those are the four categories. And when we get to that first category, which is how bodhicitta depends on certain causes, or how the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise or to be realized. And then this section, there are three categories or three parts. The development through the four conditions, the development through the four causes, and then development through the four strengths. So these are the, looking at this just from a raw outline perspective, and now we'll get into the body of the text. The tambo, the ewaje yanje suranang?
Ewaje dero, ewaje. And Senji Chenji Tangwa, Juanyi Tang Guchudang. Senji Tangwa de la, Jedun Deni da Radun Deni Tang Ures. What the Tang Guchudis?
The tambo?
Tambo dero, tambo.
Okay, self and others. Nipa?
Nipa dero Hambas. What the Jumba in the Shiraga Yaburis, Hambas.
Ale, the Larin Chenmo yure. Ale, okay. Then Sumba?
Sumba do the Chenji Senji Nadan Shebas. Chenji Lijibi Senji Nadan, Chenji Senji Jero. Senji Jid, Tijan Senji Nadan Paris. Sheba dance.
Madame.
And
Did Zerna? Madame Pasena?
Chenji Lijibi Senji Ro.
Genji.
Chenji Lijibi. Chen Tombali Jibi Senji, Chen Nibali Jibi Senji, Chen Sumbali Jibi Senji, Chen Jibali Jibi Senji Jiro, Senji Jiga Senji Ro.
Okay.
Senji Nadrobas, what they said. Nadroba Sheba dance. Seniba Mozuma was. That Senji Seniba Mozuma. Or Saji Jiterin.
Seniba Ngusu, the Donda Kare, Jipa.
Senji someone did this and Mozuma through that.
How defined? And the giant shave is such a.
Jaji Bisaji Double, how can the Larich Blue?
Okay, so when we look at Jayan Sheba's commentary, we find that the Tambo Ewaji, the Tambo the Tsengare, the Mingare, Pitsu, Senche Pitsu, Gare, Ewaji, you know, the Chuchen, Ewaji, Chuchen Gare.
Chen Jil Jibi Chulas,
Okay,
Sen
okay.
Chu dance.
Okay. Then Ewa-ji.
Sen
Okay,
Chu
Dig-san.
dance.
Okay. Okay, so we find that there are four categories that Jayan Sheba presents in terms of the four conditions, the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions. So I'm just going to go through it. Rinpoche explained to me what each of these four categories are, and I don't see how they're connecting, so I just hopefully this will be for this section. But the first is that the development of the spirit of enlightenment fulfills one's own aims as well as others' aims. So this is the first category Rinpoche's saying. The second category is that through listening and hearing about the spirit of enlightenment, you wish to achieve it. So first is that the spirit of enlightenment fulfills your own needs and others. The second is you hear about it and hear about its excellence, and then this inspires you. The third, this is what I kept going back and forth with. This deals with four conditions. With these four, if these four conditions are there, then this development will occur. And then number four is then how this is defined, how all of this is defined. So as we go through each of them, we'll see the connecting factors. So those are the four according to the Jayan Sheba's commentary, under the major heading of development through the four conditions. Okay.
Lamrim Chenmo zero nas. What the Ninja Jachu Jago Guluma Tinsun to Dumbo Marabed, but Chiki de la Senji Chula Jes or the Nere. Never Senji Chula Je.
Less so.
Jukala ten Chewa dance.
Less so.
Shanju sent Jukala ten Chagares. Shanju Saint Jean Urimbas. Shanju Saint Jean Urimba. Shanju Saint Jules Chebitse. Chugis once. Sajid Terendua. That's one that Tombo la son les Chenrezig Jawa. Geshe Lharampa, son yodrwa. What in the Levantan Jajibo, the Geshe Lharampa, Richmond. What that Omogo Jushana could say Angaten.
Okay, so when we look at the English text, page 21, we see how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. It says how to develop the spirit of enlightenment is explained in four parts. How the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise, the stages of training in the spirit of enlightenment, the measure of producing the spirit of enlightenment, and how to adopt the spirit of enlightenment through a ritual. And then the first category, how the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes, there's three categories. Development of the spirit through the four conditions, the development of the spirit through the four causes, and development of the spirit through the four strengths. So these are the three.
There's one. That number what the Chenrezig Chula Sonro, Chenrezig Jawa, to Chujeli Jawa, to Jeli Jawa Sonche. That number Chenrezig Jawa de la Tomba Chenrezig Jawa de la Saji Jiren was. And Saji Jigna Tomba Tene Tombo. Sanji Shansenji, two Sanji Machaba Rangi, Tuan, Icheba Le, Tubala Denes, and then Sanji the Shanchu Sambasula, two Sanji Machaba de, and Rangi Tuan, Rangi Matumba de Yena, and the Susu Lama the Icheba Lama than the Yorua. Lama Tenzin, Icheba Le, Tuba dance, Lama Le Chuniene, and Tetabine Tuba La Dene, Ne Kala Nebadan, Jubi, Shanchu Dene, Tuchu Nado, Saint Jebajuares, the Jen Jignon, Jen Tombilichi, Saint Jedres.
And ngama the ewa ji the randa jendun dan ngawa dan the
What the
jenji.
Suka Shetan, Tango, Tombo, the Leon.
Okay, the tambo randun dan the giant sheba the sache the tambo the chiran sumpre the randun dan shendun. We don't tambo the nipa the ngap the anjegu the ngawa. The sumba the jenji.
That Jenjeli Joa, what Tilmanduna, Tilmaleon.
You know the tambo.
Tama Sanjikun Sugul Maleon, yeah.
Okay.
Tomba Jenjeli Joa, and never usually Joa the Yungurata. Tomba Jenjeli to my Juna.
That's okay, so then the kakare.
Jenjeli Tunes, Sanji Shansen Su Jesus, Sanji Shansen Shesu, what the name of Tango to Tanjanjibe. Jenjeli Tune, and Tune, or Jenjeli to the la, and Sanji Shansen Ji, Tosanji Machabas, Sanji de Shanju Sambazul, Tosanji Machaba Euro, Sanji de Shanju Sambazul, never Sanji Machaba Euro. The Rangi Twans, the Sanji de Shanju Sambazul, never Sanji Machaba Euro, the Rangi Twan, Ranga Matumba in Inaya, Susu Laman of the Yichesa Euro. Yicheba Chunian, or Tetabo, Tubala Den and Saint Junga Juarez. The Jan Tombil Jibi, the Saint Jidres,
That's
Saint Jibatans, the Tombil Tombo.
That's okay. So how the spirit of so we turn to page 22. How the spirit of enlightenment depends on certain causes to arise, and then it says that there are three parts: the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions, the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four causes, and the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four strengths. We begin with the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions, and then we begin, there are four categories presented here by Tsongkhapa, Lama Tsongkhapa, and we'll begin with the first category. And at this point, anyone who's taking notes, I don't believe that that's connected to the four categories, with the self and others, fulfillment being category number one, and then listening to, etc. That doesn't seem to connect yet. So just kind of, if you're taking notes, put that off to the side for now. I'll explain later, but just put it off to the side for now. So number one, the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the four conditions. Number one, you develop the spirit of enlightenment either by seeing for yourself the inconceivable power of Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, or by hearing about them from a reliable person and then thinking, this enlightenment in which they abide or which they pursue is very powerful. Here, this first condition, which helps create the arisal of, helping cause the arisal of the spirit of enlightenment. So when we look at the wording, so Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have inconceivable powers. So if you witness them, any of these powers, and then are inspired by it, this would be under this category as far as that kind of condition. And another way is, for instance, if you really trust in your teacher, in your Lama, and then your Lama gives you an explanation and tells you about those inconceivable powers that maybe you haven't witnessed for yourself, but you believe in what your teacher is saying. So here then, when you begin to believe what the teacher is saying, what your Lama is saying, this also serves to inspire you to want to achieve this enlightenment, and then bodhicitta is the entrance to one's ability to do that. So then this serves as a condition that helps cause it, or helps its arisal. So that's category number one.
Da nipa den maris, da nipa Tetabi Tontu Majans, and Sanji Shansen, Tosanji Majaba, Rang Tuan, Tuba, Yechibi, Gigele, and Tuba Majans, and Tetabi Tontu Majan, Lana Mabe Shantule Zambi, Denu Nyabana, Sanji Jila, Mene Yishi, Sanji Badans, Tetabi Hamanaji Tontu Maba Inaya, and the Lana Mabe Shantu Sele Zambi, and the Kanyu Tanju, Pusha to Loon, Pusha Lune, and Tene, and Casaude. Denu Nyabana, Sanji Shila Mabajin, Tapacha Kanju Tanju Mabulune, and what the Sanji Shit Sanji Majaba in the Kone, and they are Sanji on the Jiwaris. Then you but this.
And the Injike, the Conjure Tanger, the Anjergu, then the Bechalo, Dang Anjergu, the Bechalo Kuna.
But that Gagamania, but you put a loo in your water.
Ale.
Put a lune. Set up it to me, Johnson, Hama, and Sanji Shansen to Sanji Machaba, Uncle Tom, Tuba, each able leg again, and the Tuba Latene, and the Tetabi Nasu Tontu Meba Inaya, Tetabi Tontu Majan, Lana Mabi Shanchule Zambi, Denu Nebanas, Denu Nebana, Sanji Shila Mene, Sanji Pasha Lune, Mendoa.
Bechalo.
Sanji Ungajuares.
Ah, they Anjer Gugumare. Marbe.
The Gagin she was in my Kupasha Lun Chiquayurota.
Ale. Okay, so number 2. Although you may not have although you may not have seen or heard of such a power in this way, you can develop the spirit by listening to the scriptural collections, which take unsurpassed enlightenment as a point of departure, and then aspiring to the sublime wisdom of a Buddha. So I asked Rinpoche about this. It says listening here. Rinpoche is saying it's specifically reading the text, reading the Kangjur, reading the Tanjur, and then reading about this Buddhahood that a teacher would speak about. So it's not that it's saying if there isn't a teacher present to be able to explain these for you able to hear, then you use the Kangjur, the Tanjur, as a source for this inspiration. So the spirit by listening to scriptural collections, I don't know that the word listening means what we would normally think, because here, if you look at the top, the first one, it's hearing about them from a reliable person. So listening, in this case, Rinpoche said, is referring to reading the text itself. Now, I guess as a note, if someone were reading the text to you without any commentary or anything, just reading the text, that would probably mean the same thing. But it's specifically the reading of a text in this case, which serves as a condition to help the arisal of bodhicitta. So that's number 2. Diksan Rinpoche.
And Chu Matu Jans, Chu Dun what the Natu Gili Matuba Inaya, and the Tiba Chambi Tamba de Nodunawa, Tiba Chambi Tanshu to my Nyandia, what the Nyakayobate, and Tuana, and Tiba Chambi Chu the Yana Digmare, Tiba Chambi Chu de Neba in a Sijan Mambula Pentures, and a Sijan Mabi Dungase to the Wayungres. Then in Sonson, Tetabi, Chude, United never say to Dag Senjiba, and the Senji Dojane, Senjiba, what the Somba the rest, Tazomba, Chuma Tujan, Shan Senji Tanchu Nodu, Nyawa Tuana, Chude Dabu never ne, Tiba Chimbi, Chude, Njiden never in a ne, never ne, Senji Badu maybe, Dungan Sewa Shiba Yimbi. Tiba Jimbi Chu the Jiden Nebaina, Senja Badumabal Penturi, Dungan Se Ture, Dawayungres, Sewa Shibe, 다기 장생지 주대 제발 준비 주대 유연도 내가 샤유체도 내가 생제도 전에 생제용 가지고서 what is umba드레스다.
So number 3, although you may not have heard the teachings, you can develop the spirit by understanding that the excellent teaching of the Bodhisattvas is about to disappear, and then thinking, I will definitely develop the spirit of enlightenment so that the Bodhisattva teaching will remain for a long time, because the existence of such teaching removes suffering from innumerable living beings. So even if you haven't heard the teachings yourself from a teacher, haven't read about them or read them, just the idea that the teaching itself could disappear from the world if you don't achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment, then this inspires you to want to achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Because knowing that this teaching helps sentient beings remove their suffering, and knowing that this provides happiness for sentient beings, inspires you to want to preserve it. And the way that the Mahayana is preserved is by a being achieving bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, the entrance to the Mahayana. This is the standard, the qualification for the Mahayana being present. That's not the right way to put it, but that is the Mahayana, that bodhicitta, that mind that aspires to enlightenment, is that entrance to the Mahayana. So if that's present, then that the Mahayana is present. So the idea that this could disappear altogether inspires you to want to achieve that so that it doesn't. Diksum Rinpoche.
다오데 제바제 다 송바드로 다 제바데서도 제바데 추노바 마토야스 아네 추노바 제바 준비 추노바도 마토야 아네 뒤쳐내 봐시라레스 뒤쳐내 봐 아네 뒤쳐내 봐
Lesso.
तमु शेचवा मोसमे बा चेमे बा छादु शेचवा सनाला सुबे नमु शेची दुंदर न्यारा की शाचु चु तो सेजे बा ने बा कानास तताबी दुसेंगे बा देले ने थेबा चेबी शाचु चु तो सेजे बा तो फाजा ने तुदो राजे की सेजे बा ने बा काली खाबोरेस तने सोसो दाकी लाना में भी शाचु चु तो 네, 라나메 비샤주주도 세제바 다제면스 냐랑 샤주주도 세제 제바데 공부이나 라나메 비샤주주도 세제바 네 가서래 공부이마도 시마고 버레스 제바 다제면 다기 네 다기 레지 다기 세제나스 레지 다기 샤주주도 세제바이나 젠투게 알미다는 생지바 용거래냐네 젠신의 생지 용거 지와르스 젠어다 단주로냐네 생지바 까와 돈의 생지바도 제바오스 젠실 지바도 어떠바 준래.
Okay, so number 4. Although you have not seen the decline of the teaching, you think it is difficult to generate the spirit of enlightenment of even a Shravaka or Prachika Buddha in these terrible times in which there is a preponderance of ignorance, shamelessness, lack of embarrassment, jealousy, stinginess, and the like, then what need is there to mention developing the spirit of highest enlightenment? If I were at some point to develop the spirit of enlightenment, others would surely follow. Thus you generate the spirit of enlightenment through seeing the difficulty required to develop it. So here, number 4 is realizing that the mind generation of a hearer or a solitary realizer is extremely difficult to achieve in these degenerate times. So it says in the terrible times. This is meaning during the degenerate times, the times of the degenerated ethics. So during that time, which is the time that we're in now, the mind generation of hearers and solitary realizer is very, very rare. Just as a translator's note, mind generation isn't only for Mahayana. You have mind generation for hearers, solitary realizer, and bodhisattva. Just the mind generation for the Hinayana is renunciation, whereas in the Mahayana it's bodhicitta. Another note, the path of accumulation for a hearer, solitary realizer, is renunciation. So that's mind generation for those practitioners. So that's why it's not called bodhicitta, though, because that means Buddha mind. But it's called mind generation. And the way it qualifies it and makes it bodhicitta, it's called Mahayana mind generation. So just as a note, when you see these words, those are the differences. So hearers, Shravakas are hearers, and Pratyeka Buddhas are solitary realizers. Here you recognize that these realizations, lesser realizations, are so rare. So then that really inspires you to want to seek out this rarest form of realization. So that's what number 4 is referring to, and it serves as a condition to help you generate bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Digsung Rinpoche.
다 젠실이 집 추다 디던시바 니르와 젠실이 집 추들라 젠시든 누구도와 젠시 차르다 다 디던시바들 양자 젠시도 사지 조용도 오들 디던시바스 디던시바도 와데 생지 추내서 왔다는 마용도 디던시바들 사지 조 사지 조는 담부데 안다나 제트 차네 대주고들 생지 주내서 어때 양자 용들어
에와 주
들마 주용도 주
얘네 tambo the ewa ji then nitsa then ewa
생지 주다 디된시바 니로 생지 주들에 젠실이 좋아 제듯이 차로
사sh
다 디된시바들에
how kandre
네 주용거 주
drew 얘네 the garshine the lansong kaba ewa ji yanje
아까데
then the semche kandre jegdu the ewa ji
생지비 주들 때는 젠실이 좋아데 젠실이 좋아데 디된시바 니로
then dun sheba ewa ji no
된시바들 주래
drew are they
동부들 젠실이 좋아데 젠실이 좋아데
less so
니바디 된시바들 사지 조용으로 주
Okay, so we have 2 categories under the development of the spirit of enlightenment through the 4 conditions. First, it's the development through the 4 conditions, and there's these 4 categories. And then there's how the spirit of enlightenment arises from the 4. And Rinpoche is saying there's 6 categories here. So we'll see how that, because I was saying that we have 4 in the body of the main text. So we'll see where we go. With those categories.
다 넘버디 된시바들로와데 주고는 넘버든면 용하래 생지 주네 상주 첨부 생지 제 손배 상주로 돈도 제보스 상주 주도 생지에서 신전 단지도 상지고 뭐 투바 샤오냐베 생지바들 생지바서 그래서 생지바 상주 좀 생제버 제제 손배 상주로 돈도 제보스 생제 단지도 상주고 뭐 투바 샤오냐베 돈도 제보들 생제바로 그래서 담부를 담부 주고는 담부들에
네, senchepi2 shanchi chemba sem jepa glen kabar kagudu jepa o
너바 제보스 어떤 담부래
okay. Okay. So this first of the 6 categories is right here. Concerning how the spirit of enlightenment arises from these 4 conditions. This is category number 1. It is said that they inspire you to attain great enlightenment, so desire to attain enlightenment arises. So This is category number 1. Okay. Khensur Rinpoche.
Tani batene jen gangi shebala tambu chuchu ngosawa tonga tune yasen jede detabi shanchu dene shanchu dag tuwa shawu nyane nyaba yinlas o de tambu menro nipa je nipa
Then chichu ngutsan. Then jangangi jepa la tambo ni de rebe Rinpoche.
tambu senji tune ane shanchu chenpo senji bala je sombe shanchu tunde jebo tambu je
Tambo.
nipa jen gangi shebala jen gang la tene shanchu senji jega de sena tambu
That's so.
zuchu ngosawa tonga tune yasen jedes sanji de shanchu sambazil zuchu mo tenya yoro nipa mo yoro wote tone yasen jen tetabi shanchu de ne dag tuba shawu nyane senji jeba to wote nipa dres ta nipa
Okay.
nipa
Ale.
hane yin la
Selbudu.
ta nipa ote nipa menro nipa chu ma la nipa wale wote ma wote nipa chu ma le sanji ji ten nipa tombe deba ji tene sanji la tunde jeba wos wote yan che nipa re de nipa re doa
Then Tambo. Okay, that's cool. Tambo, the Shanchi Chenmo, the Shanchi Chenmo Semje Bar Jeche.
shanchu tunde jeba wos tombe je
Then Nipa.
nipa yin sare jen gangi sheba la tambo wos jen jig na tambo le won jiro ta zuzu ngosawa tonga tune yasen jede tetabi shanchu de dag tuba shawo nyane sen hyane yinlas
Okay, Nipa.
nipa kongle menro ha nipa de chum hawa le sanji jin de nyebe tombe deba je tedala tunde jeba wo so de ji nipa menro somba wo de ndo
Nipa Sumba.
ten ji nipa je ten somba ten la ni jibon koron somba ndo
Then the Tambo, the Tambo Dang Nipa, Tambo, Gangisina, the Tambo ni Chichu Ngutsashwa. The Nipa Dang Nipa Chu Mawa,
de me ji wo de nipa yin sare nipa somba ba to
Nika Nipa. Nika.
wo
Okay.
de me ji nipa yin sare
Okay.
somba wolu somba ndo
Okay. So now category number 2 is as follows. It's going to be 1 and 2 in what you see in the English. After you hear or see or hear about supernormal powers, you are awed, thinking, I will attain such an enlightenment, and then generate the spirit of enlightenment. Through hearing about the good qualities of a Buddha from an instructor, you first develop faith, and then there arises a desire to attain these qualities. The Salo ni yure, the tambo.
다 가서 아니 어디 손발 자도 어디 대 신이바 임바도 손바 대도다.
Okay.
니바제 다 손바네 체제제 템바 노바 조알라 마즈네 산지지 실라 돈데 집바데 들라 템바 노바 마통나 체제지 템바 마누나 사지기 템바도 마네나 마누나 사지기 템바도 마냐나 사지기 템바지데 네바이나 근데 세제 몸을 팬도 그래스 템바 마누나 세제지 동에 도바 통화 예배 동에 세이셔도 메바 예매장스 세제비 제주도 템바 노발로 마저바데 자우레스 tata maina wote hinjila tene senji sheba tan ryoso sa 다 송바 어때 송바 뜻도 송바 태제지 템바 노바 태제지 템바만 냥려야 통네 들 마주에는 생지용의 주어레스 생지용의 주어레스 어때 네 송바드레스 마주에는 상지지 실로 통되지 버때 ndala temba manunas sanjigi temba manuna sanjigi temba neba ina sejeji donga duba tonga yebes temba yeba ina an seje donga ka tugur dawa yungres tonga yebe donga se ishedo meba donga se ishedo ane meba yede yores yeme jans senjibi tu senjibi jenji tu temba nomba mazoba de jagures temba nomba mazoba genji senji ba isla gures ane jendon de jajo mares jendon senji ba jagmandus temaina tatama tase don marbet juniores tatamaina wodo nijila tene jewa sheba de so tatamaina no wul hinjida 마시드 전전에서 용의 샤반 hinjila 때네 생지버 송 어떤 되는 거です레소 샤반은 차는 거です
Okay,
야 어디 봐 지주나
Okay, so number 3, on finding the thought of the decline of Mahayana teachings unbearable, you develop the desire to attain a Buddha's sublime wisdom. In regard to this last point, you see that if the teaching does not disappear, the suffering of living beings can be stopped. So even though your objective is indeed to remove the suffering, nevertheless, the principal condition for the spirit of enlightenment arising is your inability to bear the fact that the teaching might disappear. Otherwise, this way of developing the spirit would repeat the explanation presented later on in the text of how the spirit arises in dependence on compassion. So this specific section is not showing that you don't want to see the teachings disappear out of compassion for sentient beings, because that would fall categorically under compassion, and this is explained later when we see the various stages that lead up to the spirit of awakening or lead up to bodhicitta. We have recognizing all sentient beings are our mother, and then we have remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, compassion, extraordinary attitude, and then we have the arisal of that effect, the bodhicitta, the spirit of awakening. So we're not speaking about that here because Lama Tsongkhapa is saying I'm not being redundant. I'm specifically speaking about the teaching not disappearing and not speaking of the objective to remove suffering, even though that this point is not being made about that. It's just about an ability to bear the idea of the teaching disappearing altogether, but not connected to these thoughts of it, sentient beings, out of compassion for sentient beings. So, Diksun, Rinpoche, Sumba Tsar.
다 jiba dine jiba derendo jiba ane jiba desendo jiba dwenye tsangwa tereng ha ba se do de jiba dwenye tsangwa tereng ha ba jiba wa de jiba ne dwenchi sen de gwan ba tunes dwenchi sen sha ju sen de marbe sha ju sen dwenda chi bu jidaro de yoba ina sha ju sen de dwenda chi bu ro dwenchi sen de juli ji ken gwan bu jidares gwan ba tunes daman ru song ni tu dong ra je ge sen je ba de ka na tiba chen bi sha ju sen ba ji le kali khabres gwan ba tune tu di gu ne sa tiba chen bi ane sha ju sen je ba gwan ba tune di chen she ne ane sang je la tune je ba des wa de sang je la tune je ba de ja gu res 젠 대전시네 상지로 돈을 제바데 생제반데네 상주로 돈을 제비고는 자기스 생제반의 제도시 아다주비 상주도스 대전 생제데 네 상주로 돈을 제비고는 자고레스 젠도도 조장라메지 네 젠도도 조장라메지라 네 젠도도 조장라메지 대전이 요구주 조이지 나리 대전 생제지 생제반의 제도시 양다주비 상주도스 대전 생제가 천이 되거든스
Parshin.
대전 생제가 천이 쇼스나 젠도도 조장라메지 대전 라지 요구주비 조이지 나리 대전 생제지 천이스 어때 다다다 도마 제마단지
Parshin Shidun, the Semche, the Sachi Yure, Dan, Ju, Mo, Rapche.
델헤도 아
Yeah, you're right. Techen Semche Gitsene. You're right.
생제반의 제도시 양다주비 상주도스
Rangi Josuju. The Techen Senche, the Rangi, the Yomarbe. Rangi Ngo.
조수주비 제도도 조장라면서 랑 조수주비 상주 가서 통통받대비 대전란 요 어들에
네, okay.
생이들에
Okay. So now we move on to number 4. Number 4. After you see how rare this most powerful, purposeful spirit is, you develop a desire to attain Buddhahood, spurred on principally by this awareness. With regard to the two components of the spirit of enlightenment, the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of welfare of all beings, this fourth development of the spirit of enlightenment is established in terms of producing a desire to attain enlightenment and not established in terms of the aim. So when we look at the definition in the Abhisama Alamkara of the mind generation, there are 2 points that are made. First it says the Buddhahood, and then it says for the benefit of all sentient beings. So there's 2 points. One is this aim of liberation of a Buddha, or Buddhahood, and then the second is this idea of doing it for the sake of others, or for the purpose of other beings. So that's how it's defined here. But then when we look at specifically the definition of Mahayana mind generation in the Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, we see it's defined as a consciousness which is the entrance to the great vehicle, arisen in association with a wish which is its own aid that aims at the perfect enlightenment for the sake of others. So that's how it's defined by Panchen Sonandrapa, and then we see in the Maitreya's text how it's just bodhicitta is defined, or the spirit of awakening is defined, and how it has those 2 points, not just one, kind of complete point that it is this aim to benefit others. It's an aim and an idea to benefit others. So that's what's meant there. So it's time to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Jibane Dunchi sente Gumbatone to Digune Sanjila Tunde Jibas, and the Jen Jibatu Wateris, Tiba Champion Juju to San Jibatu Gumbatone, and the 2 days Jenshene, San Jibanga Juaris, Sanjulu Tunde Jibas, San Jibandene, Sanjulu Tunde Jibugone Jacques, San Jide, Sanjulu Tunde Jibugone Jagaris. Jen do Jean la Méjin, Rang Tusu, the Bada Sonde Jubi, Tijan La Jubi, Suiji Nari, Tijan Saji Marba, what the Jen do Shanchu Tunde Jibi, Sanchiba Gentila, Saji Yagures, Sanjiban dene, Shanchula Tunde Chibukune Jagis, Sanjiban Jendun Shanda Zubi Shanchundu, Mayu de la Shanchu de Jendun Yindua, Shanchula Tunde Chibukune Sanji Jagures, Sanjiban dene, Shanchula Tunde Chibukune Jagi, Chidu Shayukune Majago, Jendun Chan Jagamares, Majaba Tangosa. Sanji Jin de la Deba Jean Yugune, Sanji la Tunde Mena, Rangi Tundubala, Shiva Jambi, Chubanziba, Lud Madu Tesa, Sanji la Deba Jean, and Jean Yugune, Sanji la Tunde Mena, and Rangi Tundubala, Shiva Jambi, Chubanzibi, Sanlu Dutu Mares, Rajin Dutu Mares, Sanji la Deba Jean, Jean Yugune, Shanchula Tunde Yuba Ina, and Rajin Dutu Res. And Shambatan Hinji Jambi Gune, Jendun la Gubatune, Sanji la Tunde Bene, Jendun Drubala Shawa Jambi, Chubanziba Du Nujis, Jendun Drubala, and Jendun Drubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanziba Du Nu, Sanji Jul Jena, Kasagure, Shiva Jambi Chubanziba Rajin Du Nugres, Chunzing Hame Madu Kosa, Jendun Deneglu, Jendun Chunzibilu Dege, Rajin Du Mares, Shanchula Tunde Jibukune Jaki said what in Bare. Chunzing Hame Do Munubi Shetans, Tunguji Jen Maybe Shiros, Radun Dubala Shawa Jambi Chubanzibilu, Do Maguba Medes, Radun Dubala, Shiva Jambi Chubanzibilu, the Neba Dugures, Kuala Chua Tanji, Timela Pumbatan, Tuba, Shurowale Mabis, and Kuala Truth, and Netudan Rajetul, Tuba, and Yedu, and Tuba Shuroware, and Shuroware, Jun Kunzi, and Kunde Maris, Jun Kunzi, and Kunde Sajima to your Maris, Netudan Rajetu, Jun Shura Sebatan, and Shur Dembaramatu, Jun Kunzi, and Kunde de Maris. Shura maybe Radun Person Soba maybe Shetansa, Timela, Radun Person Soba Dio Maris. Tada CB Global Tayans, Netudan Rajet to the CB Global Tayan, she Global Madrid Shedes, Tada Timeba Coapon, Coapon, CB Global Pontugres, CB Silla Menation, Nijishella Menetans. What the Timeba to Sibi Kual Kui Tapon to Gurota, she Tapon to she Tapombala, Hijichamuguro, she be Silla Menation, Hijishella Meneton, what do the lady Mudwe?
CP?
What the Calais Judan, good Calais Judan.
Okay. The Kanga Jipa?
Ah. Jiba Kong Jiba.
Kanga.
Jiba Red. Jiba Tanda Tedu, Ulma Tedu.
So, number 4, after you see how rare this most powerful spirit is, you develop a desire to attain Buddhahood, spurred on principally by this awareness. So, this desire to achieve Buddhahood in this number 4 is specifically wanting to because of its rarity and understanding how rare at this time and the mind generation of a hearer is, and how rare the mind generation of a solitary realizer is, and recognizing that it's much more rare to have the mind generation of a great vehicle practitioner during these degenerate times than that of a hearer and solitary realizer. Even though it is extremely rare to achieve those qualities. So it says, with regard to the two components of the spirit of enlightenment, the desire to attain enlightenment and the aim of welfare of all beings, this fourth development of the spirit of enlightenment is established in terms of producing a desire to attain enlightenment and not established in terms of its aim. So the fulfillment of others' needs is not what you're thinking of at this point, in this case, that the cause is for the generation of bodhicitta. You're thinking just in terms of the rarity, and this is the inspiration behind it, and not in terms of what the aim of this thing that's so rare is. So without the desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, you cannot overcome the sense of contentment that thinks peace, nirvana, alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. The desire to attain Buddhahood on account of training in love and compassion and seeing the fulfillment of others' aims as a necessity can eradicate the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill others' aims, but cannot stop the sense of contentment that thinks peace is enough for your own aims. Besides this desire to attain Buddhahood that comes from cultivating faith in a Buddha's good qualities, there is no way to stop the sense of contentment that thinks your peace alone is sufficient to fulfill your own aims. Indeed, you do need to overcome the sense of contentment that peace alone is enough to accomplish your own welfare, because 1. Hinayana practitioners who are merely liberated from cyclic existence have only a partial elimination of faults and a partial knowledge, and thus lack perfect fulfillment of their own aims. So here Lama Tsongkhapa is presenting the fact that a Hinayanist, even though they are liberated, has not fulfilled their aims, has not completely fulfilled themselves, and it's because these practitioners are liberated from the problems of cyclic existence, but not from the problems of peace. And Rinpoche didn't, I don't think, read on further, but he said that there is more in number 4, which is the more that I didn't read, but I don't think Rinpoche read on past that. He just said that there's more. So here, one has to get rid of the self-cherishing attitude in order to fulfill their own aims. So in order to do that, one has to stop the sense of contentment that thinks peace is enough. Here it's speaking of eradicating the self-cherishing attitude, seeing the faults and the drawbacks of it. So Rinpoche.
다 대나서 대나 제바 공로 대나서 대나 산지진 대나 대바장네 젠도 따슈스 랑 된도발라야 산지 토바 메모로도 통하더네 세멘도 모두비 젠첨을 줘로스 어떠바도 디지바디 마지바 대나서야데 창창와데 주센 고래 창창 대나서야데 창창 주센 고래 창창 줄 고래 난데 주센 고도 주센 대나 사지 주센 담아데 말베 안에 니도도나제도소 시비 글로벌 타양시 글로벌 타마레스 라도 번수 소바 산체지 송비셔 주센 디셔 안에 사지진 된라 대바장네 젠도 따주 랑기 된로발랑 사지 토바 매도 모로와 토나네 테메도 모두비 젠점은 조로스 워드다빌로 좀바이나 안 테멜 마사가 마레스 템부 차누레스
맞아요.
젠점은 조로스 워드바도 제바레
맞아요. The problems with peace and the perfect fulfillment of one's own aims, it is said, is a Buddha's embodiment of truth. Therefore, once you cultivate faith in the good qualities of a Buddha, you will see that you must attain Buddhahood to accomplish even your own aims, let alone the aims of others. Understanding this is important for causing you not to turn back to the Hinayana. So, by thinking of this, and thinking of these points that are being made, and understanding that you aren't fulfilling your own aims through the practice of the Hinayana, you are not fulfilling others' aims, and the rarity, and so forth. When you think of all of these things, this will inspire you to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this is still, all of this is in category number 4.
What about Jibaji? Talking about the Mayudua. Hashibi sent you about Tombunila, and Shambat and Hiji Tombamanas. What to Sukalo and Yaji in Japan on the Katulta Kalikabu Marba. Hashibi sent you Tombanis. Hashibi sent you Tombani to Josana. And then also the Karina son to Vasa de Marba. That Tombani de Chenrezig Chibi Senji, Chen Tombal Chibi Senji, Nibal Chibi Senji, Chen Sumbal Chibi Senji, Chen Jibal Chibi Senji Jiro. Senji Jig non Chen Tombani Chibi, Chen Tombani Chibi Shanchu Sente, and Chen Tombani Chibi Shanchu Sente, Shambat and Hiji Tombamanas, Chen Tombani Chibi Shanchu Sente, Shambat and Hiji Tomba. Manhalas, the Katu Pachal Mundu Song is it. The Sombare Madu, Sanjina, Mashi Tintin Tezu Yong Shamba, Hijil Hasan, the Jushibal Ten Yongurota. Chenrezig Sanji Tomani, the Katu Dele, Shamat and Hiji Tomba Mundus, Pachakatu, the Somundu Madu, Chetan Shabata, Hiji Tomba Roa, Jundimanga, Jundi Drugi, Jushibal Ten, Sanji Yongro, Machine Tintin Tezu Yong Shamba. Hijil Hasan Juji, Senji Debo Marbe.
That's so.
Hashibi Senji Domini, Nila and Shambat and Hiji Tambamano, Tekatu, Pachan Mandus.
Oh, okay.
What is Lagus at it?
Okay.
Manalas, Temalana, Senji Domini, Nidala, Shambat and Hiji Tamba Mabata Stansuna, and the Shambat and Hijil Jiba Maibata. Jutul Chiba Maiba Tansun to Kabchangua.
Okay.
Senji Domini de Shambat and Hiji Jamba to Katu to Somdos inside it. Manalas Sonrota Tenju Jen Le Chang Swanji J Suji Kodan Chujuku Yudan Tua Tanji Jambi Sanji Tundula Senji de Sheba Mabun Tawa Dance. Sonro kashi le tene, sonro kanju tenju mambale, tenju jen le jang, sanji ji, zoju kodang, chuju kuyu, ten tongwa sanji jambi, sanji tundu la yang, tijen sanji sonsa mamdos, kanju tenju sunalu, mambun tangwa tangs, senjen tangji la, senjen tangji, Dana the Katu North and the Jibatan tissue. Temed Madubi Chencham Juros, Tebato, the Jibatan Marbe. Temed Madubi Chencham Juro, Jibatayimba.
Let's go.
Gulma Tinsu Nabadel, Sensu Nabadan do Nabat.
Okay, the Rasan, Gonga Mebachik, Rinpoche, Rangi Dundru, Sanjay. Temin. Okay, Juro, then Ngarshe pi Semche, this Jipa? Okay, two chick, Gonga Mebachik, Rinpoche. Okay, so number 5, begins at among the four developments. So therefore, once you cultivate faith in the good qualities of a Buddha, you will see that you must attain Buddhahood to accomplish even your own aims, let alone the aims of others. Understanding that is important for causing you not to turn back toward the Hinayana. So not causing one to lose their mind that aspires to enlightenment. Then Rinpoche said there's a question that arises here, and it's addressed in number 5. Among the four developments of the spirit of enlightenment explained above, the first two are not induced by compassion and love. In other scriptures and treatises as well, there are many explanations of the development of the spirit of enlightenment as the desire to attain Buddhahood induced by just seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's embodiment of truth and embodiment of form. The determination to establish all beings in Buddhahood is also said to be the development of the spirit. So you must consider each of these two to be counted as simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. So there's a debate then, because it doesn't seem like we aren't presenting these stages where love and compassion are in it in order to produce this mind that aspires to enlightenment. When we look at these four conditions, we don't find these points being made. But when we see the explanation of the stages, we see recognizing sentient beings or a mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, extraordinary attitude, and bodhicitta. And we shows how this is bodhicitta is caused by these six steps. So why is it that this isn't presented? And it's saying here that in many texts there are presentations that just show how people have developed this just by gazing at a Buddha or understanding or seeing these excellent qualities before your eyes, before the practitioner's eyes. This is said that there are many ways in Scripture that it says the spirit of enlightenment occurs, and we can say that all of these different parts are just stages of the development, or just parts of the development of this same spirit. Then ngapa kabar kagadu rimche.
Ngapa do de badre ngapa de ngashi senji damni la ne niji damba shamba de niji damba manalas sonro de denju jen le jang sanji ju godan ne chuju guyu den sanji godla de ne goji marbe longo de chogo je eje chogo de wonye ko ni je marbe sanji ju go on sanji ju godla longo de chogo ni je eje chogo de wonye ko ni je ro tanda de je no da ta shanchu lo to de je ba se shanchu eje chogo ai
San Yanju Surana?
tenje senje de go de shanchu tonde je bi chan ja wo se ro shanchu tonde de eje chogo tonde ai sanji ko eje chogo wonye ko longo chogo je ro
Lasso.
senje de ge longo tonde je go are chogo tonde je go are eje chogo tonde je go are ane wonye ko tonde je go are tiba ina senje ban je de anda du shanchu tonde je go ne ja gres shanchu de eje chogo ai eje chogo sanji na je ami shön dro ami shön
Lasso.
sanji tu je ami shön jo de eje chogo la gro
Lasso.
sanji no goden sanji eje chogo eje ge din do nyomo ba shiji de ba pombe goden jo ro
Lasso.
de lo ngoni go lo ngoni go se de
Lasso.
longo chogo se ro longo se na ne ba nga de ji go ta do longo se ni ane ne o mi to bu ko bi shin ko na ju go res ne ba nga de ne chogo de ne ba nga da ma de bi go ta do chogo se ni chogo la de ne我等着要么不加油，贵贵呢就得写工作路的呀。
So when we read through this, and it says that in other scriptures and treatises as well, there are many explanations of the development of the spirit of enlightenment as the desire to attain Buddhahood induced just by seeing the good qualities of a Buddha's embodiment of truth and embodiment of form. So there are 4 different categories of bodies of a Buddha. So there are the truth bodies and emanation bodies, but so we divide them into 4. We have the exalted wisdom truth body, we have the nature truth body, we have the enjoyment body, and the emanation body. So these are the 4 bodies of the Buddha, so embodiments of form and embodiments of truth. The exalted wisdom truth body of the Buddha is referring to the Buddha's omniscience, that omniscient mind that is free of the negativities is what the exalted wisdom body is referring to. The natural truth body is referring to the cessation of suffering within the Buddha's continuum, so the Goden, the cessation of suffering, so that abandonment of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. That lack of those things is the nature body, the natural truth body. So it's considered the cessation that exists within the continuum of a Buddha. But all that's saying is that the lack of those things that the Buddha has. So the reason that it's permanent, as a translator's note, the reason that status is permanent is because it's no longer there. So that natural truth body is the lack of obstructions to omniscience, the lack of the afflictive obstructions, the lack of suffering. So that state which doesn't have those things is the nature body. And then the Rinpoche then gave textbook definitions of the enjoyment body and the emanation body. And the enjoyment body is bodhisattva, a Buddha that is teaching in a Pure Land Arya Bodhisattvas. So the qualification is that the students are Arya Bodhisattvas, are Arya beings. And then the emanation, the Rinpoche gave it and then said, well, there's a lot of information. So I don't know if he completed it, but let me see. Rinpoche, the Chokugi Tseni?
Chokugi Tseni nga ba nga na ma debi zugu tatu sire. Nga ba nga debi zugu tatu longku Tseni ro. Nga ba nga na ma debi zugu tatu. Zugu se na wate longku tan choku nidire.
Right.
Longku tan choku la kanza imi chagre.
Less so.
Kanza imi chagas.
Less so.
Tene ngoni ku kanza maro tabaro wa. Tene ishe choku tene oma tanju wa jine pechi kanza imi mare.
Oh, okay. Yeshi Chuku Tenjur the Semchen?
Yisheba.
Kansak.
Yeshi Chuku the Kanza in Segmare. Longut and Chuku Kanzare.
Then Yeshi Chuku the Gari Kalen, the Elwin Tenjur.
Yeshi Chuku Sheba. Sanji Toji Yisheba the Yisheba. Yeshi Chuku.
Then the Kansak Mayen, Kansak Yen.
Tanju Ajana Kansa in Somari. Omar Rajubi, the Sansan Baji Chenrezig Jatagro, Chitaju Matu, Uma Tanju Kansa in Silogmare.
Kansak Yen, Kansak Mayen.
Oma Tanju Kansa Mayan, Jin, Shida Manduba, Sansan, Oma Raju Tanju and Euro. Tanju over the Mayan.
Okay.
Raju be changing Najija to do what the Kansa Sheba Jews, Pejilau can the Jude.
Okay. So when we look at these divisions, so I don't have the definition of the emanation body, but the emanation body is a body that emanates in ways other than in Pure Land to Arya Bodhisattvas. So the Buddha's embodiment that can be perceived by non-Aryas. So the Buddha's embodiment of form that can be perceived by non-superiors. So this would be the emanation body. I think that's pretty close to the definition, but I'll check it, so don't write that down. So that's the emanation body. And when we divide the bodies, there are form bodies, and then there are non-form. So the enjoyment body and the emanation body are considered form bodies. And then the exalted wisdom body and the natural body, which are the truth bodies, are not. So then the chuku, the longku dan chuku lapsa.
Tanda sandado
Lapsa.
shanchul tunde shanchu jenjila tene shanchu tunde jibe senje jenduwa. Jenjila tene shanchu tunde jibe senje jede shanchu de longkore chukore ihe chukore ngoni kores. Kujima tumeba.
So.
Kujino nkares de shanchul tunde jibas. Tijen senje de shanchul tunde jigres. Shanchul de kare ihe chukore ngoni kore longkore chukores.
So the exalted wisdom body is this omniscience. And in the middle way consequence school, the statement is that this is omniscience is a mental consciousness, and it is not konsak, is not a being. And there are different ways of looking at it in terms of the four tenet systems. We know there's the Great Exposition School, the Sutra School, the Mind-Only School, and the Middle Way School. The Middle Way School has two categories, the Middle Way Autonomy School and the Middle Way Consequence School. So we're saying that in the Middle Way Consequence School, we state that the exalted wisdom body is not person, whereas if it is a emanation body, or it is a that brings something up though. Okay, if it's an emanation body or it's an enjoyment body, it is necessarily a person. Rinpoche, lonku dan chuku nika kansa yingu. Then the sanje trupi sampa chuchen. The kansa yin.
Zhuguyin sekaba, sanji zhuba yina san zhuguyin ma chalo de. Sanji zhuba yin zhugu ma yin. Sanji zhubi satan chudan medan mama zhuya yoro.
Okay.
Zhugu ma yin.
Zhuba yin. Oh, so I was asking then, so Rinpoche is saying if it's an enjoyment or emanation body, it's necessarily person. So I said, well, what about the emanation of a bridge? The Buddha said can emanate fire, a bridge, anything. Rinpoche said that that's an emanation, but not an emanation body. So if it's an emanation body, it's necessarily person, but Buddha can emanate, Rinpoche said, anything he or she wishes, but the emanation body refers necessarily to kansak, which is person.
Sanji zhuba da zhugu la musung rendo. Zhugu yina, sanji zhuba yin cha. Sanji zhuba yina, zhugu yin ma cha. Sanji zhubi satan matu shuji.
Okay, so when we divide the two, now I've done it. When you divide the two categories of emanation and emanation body, we can see that there are three permutations. If it is an emanation body, it is necessarily an emanation. But if it's an emanation, it's not necessarily an emanation body. And then if you were to say, posit that which is an emanation, but not an emanation body, you could say a Buddha's emanation of fire, Buddha's emanation of a bridge. So you could say that is something which is emanation, but not an emanation of a Buddha's body. So that's how it's distinguished anyway. The Buddha can emanate, but if it's an emanation body, then it's necessarily person. And then there are two categories of Buddha's emanation body, of form, enjoyment body, and emanation. So those are the two categories of body. So there's, I guess, a difference in the terminology. When we look at the word emanation, if it's a body or it's just it matters. So there's two categories, apparently. One that's a body and one that's non. And so it's kansak and being and non-being. Digsung Rimche, Nye Tsampa. Solasa.
That Truba Tanama Yon, Truba Seni Yonsu Dubi, Truba Seni Yonsu Dubi, Senji Lana, Jendun La, Goba Tonga Tanji, Jambi, Sanji Tunde Sanji Machubi, Randun La, Sanji Medu Muroma, Tongi Tunde Tang, Teyan Genji Tuen Yawa, Jaba Meba, Genji Shetuan, Tundu Nyawa Shiguites, Takante was the Senji to Dubani Gugres, Modu Genle, Senji Ban Jendun, Yanda Zubishan Jundus, take a teaching Senji Teni dance, Teni dance, teaching Senji Teni, what the and Senji teaching Senji Teni, Jendun to Dozana Machine, Rango to Jubishan, the bottom Sudan to be, teaching like Yugu to is Nari, teaching Senji Tenis, what the Modu Jende. Then between the use on the Beijing is to the York and Gabi Shaka Jibareta, Modu de la Tenijagurota.
Okay, Ngapa, Kabarka, Sini.
Ngaba than the and trans John Gulas with the Ngaba J. Truba Teni Yunsu Dubas, Denma, Trubal.
Okay, so number 5 ends at, so you must consider each of these two to be counted as simply developments of the spirit of enlightenment. Now number 6. With regard to developing a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment, however, it is not sufficient merely to have the desire to attain Buddhahood upon seeing the necessity of fulfilling others' aims. You must have the desire to attain Buddhahood that sees that it is indispensable even for your own aims. Furthermore, this intention must not neglect others' welfare, but be for others' sake as well, because the ornament for clear knowledge talks about both the intention to attain enlightenment and the intention to accomplish others' welfare. So it says, here we find the definition of Mahayana of bodhicitta from the ornament for clear realization. The development of the spirit of enlightenment is the desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. So this word "is" may not necessarily, when we find that there's 2 points here, maybe it should be "and." So just as a thought, because we have 2 thoughts: the development of the spirit of enlightenment, or actually, I think it's actually, I apologize, I think it's the second line. The desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. Perfect enlightenment for others' welfare. I need the root Tibetan, Abhisama Alamkar, to check this with Rinpoche. But I will do that in the future because I'm curious about that. And that's number 6. Then Rinpoche, the Ngudujen, the Pöyik, the Chiran, the Seni Larona.
Jendun to Dojan la Mijinserta. Shanchu Tunde, the Jeng to Shanchu Tunde Jugores, Radon to Shanchu Tunde Jan Digamares, Sanjiban, Jendun Sher, and that to Shanchu Dus. Jendun to Dojan la Mijin. Jen Senjan Taji Tunto, Sanji Kumutuba Shawonabe, Sanjaba Jengila, Sanji Jagures.
Lessa.
What is a Gurota? That Robert and Sanji, Tejan Sanji, Teni Yonsu Dubi, Sanji Lane, Jendun la Gobaton Tanchi, Jambi, Tunde Sanji Mashubi, Jendun, Sanji Ban, Jendun Sheris, Jendun Roa, Jendun Shanchu Tunde Sanji Digamares, Tunde Sanji Machubi, Randun Layan. Randon Yonsu Zubala, Sanji Medu Moronwa, Tonyu Tundu Tang, Teyan Genji Yuando Ameba, yen yuwa de ba me ba yen ji she do ton du ni wa she gu des yen do de sha ju ne ba ni de gu res kong ga res na ja sha ma ngo du jen le sen je ba ne yen de she an da du bi sha ju des te ba je me sen je ba de yen sen je ta je don do ne sha ju to ban de bi sen che ba jin je la ja gu res sen je ba ne yen de she an da du bi sha ju des Wadi konde bi senji do wadi pecha kanga no yuare. Pechen tang, jitun tang, ane wadi pecha tsama no yuare. Chi shangchu dan jendu nye ka la sombi shiros. Senji pa dan jendu nye ada du shangchu dosi, shangchu dan jendu nye bute, ane tedang tenen du jing to, du dan jebi gu na juus. Techen senji mi shangchu dan jendu nye bute, yung pa ma nye che marbe nye che bom nye che je dong yung pa me yen don de shang chu nye bute je ba da du ba ni ju gu ne she ge res nye che ge nye che ne yen don de shang chu nye bute je ba da du ba ni ju gu ne she ge res te jin do je ba bom da du ba je dong be chang je du ni ju gu ne she ge res ta da ten do jin do du da je bi gu ne ju 유도 지비군에 매일 상주의 전년예부터 년체 지도인지군의 시바 마제 제바 봄당 두바 제동배장 지도인지군의 시그레스 다다다는 뜻이 두데 지비군의 주 모두 다다 가도르여.
So when we look where the source of the information that we find on bodhicitta, and we find very similar points made when we look at the Panchen Sonandrapa definition of mind generation, Mahayana mind generation, and then when we look at the definition according to Maitreya in the Abhisama Alamakara of Mahayana mind generation. We find very, very similar points being made. So in the Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection, we see a consciousness which is the entrance to the great vehicle arisen in association with a wish that aims at the perfect enlightenment for the sake of others. So that's very similar to what we find in the Abhisama Alamakara. The development of the spirit of enlightenment is a desire for perfect enlightenment for the other's welfare. So very similar in those two cases. And where does all of this come from? When we look at the perfection of wisdom teachings, we have the 8,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, and then the 100,000 verse perfection of wisdom. The medium would be the 20,000 verse, and then greater information would be found in the 100,000, and then the 8,000 verse would be more condensed. And then the Abhisama Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization, is a very, very condensed text. So this is where we would find the source of this information. And I'm forgetting something, I feel. Ngay tsampa diksun.
Ta senje ngadu jele senje ba ne jendon she yada zu bi shangchu de je shangchu da jendon ni ga song bi sheros shangchu da jendon ni bu de shangchu da jendon ni bu de yo nye che je du ni ju gun she ba ma je ba bon ta du ba je don bi je du ni ju gun she res ta tan du jin to du na je bi gun jues.
So these two thoughts that are presented here, of the desire for perfect enlightenment and the desire to benefit others, we find these two thoughts presented in the perfection of wisdom teachings, in the 100,000 verse, the 20,000 verse, and the 8,000 verse. So we find this expanded and explained in a much greater fashion in these larger texts, but it's precisely the same meaning as what's presented in this smaller format. Khensur Rinpoche. So we're going to end there, and just everybody remember we have a meeting right afterwards, and that's it. Thank you, as always. No, I can't remember. All right. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. Send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. Whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Yatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tu Shi Rinpoche Guti Shapi Danrunang, Su Lamrim Chenmo Kanga Chironang.